You might have heard this really shocking claim making its way around the globe, that Canada is helping its citizens die just because they're poor. It's a wild idea, right? And it's totally shaping how the world sees this incredibly complex issue. So let's break it down and really separate the facts from the fiery headlines. So the story that's really grabbing international attention is powerful and, frankly, it's disturbing. It paints a picture of a society that's just given up on its most vulnerable people, offering death as some kind of solution to poverty. But to get what's actually happening, we have to look way past the headlines and dig into the facts. And there it is. That's the argument in a nutshell. It's a statement that's been blasted out by commentators, and it's really stuck. The logic seems simple, right? If a government provides a way for people to end their lives, and some of those people are in a terrible financial spot, well, isn't that just helping people escape poverty by dying? So is that what's really going on? To find out, we need to just slow down for a minute, look at the actual rules on the books, and get to the heart of what is an incredibly sensitive debate. Okay, first things first. Before we can even touch the controversy, we have to understand the system itself. So what exactly is MAID? MAID. It stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. Now, this isn't some vague policy idea. It's a specific, legal medical service that became available all across Canada back in 2016. And the whole thing is governed by a really strict set of rules. And let me be clear, this is a highly regulated procedure. It has to be administered by a doctor or a nurse practitioner. It absolutely requires voluntary and informed consent, and it involves multiple independent medical assessments just to confirm if someone is eligible. This is all laid out in federal law. And here's a point that is absolutely crucial to understand. In the eyes of Canadian law, MAID is considered a medical procedure. It is not legally defined as suicide. That single classification is central to this entire debate, both from a legal and an ethical standpoint. All right, so now that we have the basic facts down, let's test that explosive claim we started with. Can someone in Canada legally choose to end their life just because they're poor? Let's just ask the question as directly as we can. Does being poor, or homeless, or not being able to afford your bills, does any of that make you eligible for medical assistance in dying in Canada? The law is incredibly clear on this. The answer is a hard no. An unambiguous, absolute no. Poverty is not a legal reason to qualify for MAID. Neither is homelessness, or unemployment, or the high cost of living. You simply cannot be approved for MAID for any of these reasons alone. Period. So here's the bottom line. Eligibility is tied directly and solely to a person's medical state. You have to have what's called a grievous and irremediable medical condition. You have to have the mental capacity to make your own healthcare decisions, and you have to give voluntary consent. Your bank account has nothing to do with it. Okay, so if the law is that black and white, why are we even talking about this? Where is all this controversy and confusion coming from? Well, this is where that simple legal answer runs smack into a much, much more complicated and painful human reality. And here's where the two stories collide. The controversy isn't coming from the law. It's coming from documented cases where people who were medically eligible for MAID were also living in absolutely desperate circumstances. So while yes, they had a qualifying medical condition, they also reported things like not having adequate housing, living in poverty, or having no social support. And this is the critical nuance that just gets totally lost in the headlines. For these individuals, poverty was not the legal key that opened the door to MAID, but it was, without a doubt, part of the backdrop of their suffering. And that complicates the whole picture and raises some really profound ethical questions. This brings us to the real heart of the matter. It's not so much about what the law says, but about the quality of the choice a person is making when they feel trapped between a devastating illness on one side and a life without adequate support on the other. And you know, the most powerful and important critique here comes from disability rights advocates. They have been on the front lines of this issue, raising a huge alarm about what these complex cases really say about our society's values and responsibilities. Their core argument is this. If a person is suffering from a terrible medical condition and society fails to give them the basic support they need to live with dignity, things like accessible housing and proper care, then is their choice to die truly free? Or is it a choice that's being made under duress? You see how this completely reframes the whole issue? The argument becomes less about whether MAID should exist and much more about the failure of our social safety nets. Critics are saying that before we offer a choice to die, we have a deep social responsibility to provide a meaningful choice to live. So let's just quickly pull all this together. The claim that Canada allows MAID for poverty? That is legally false. The idea that it's state-sponsored suicide? Legally, it's defined as a medical procedure. The reality is that some people who are medically eligible also face crushing poverty, and this raises serious ethical questions about whether their choice can ever be truly free. So after looking at the law, the claims, and all these deep ethical concerns, what's the real takeaway here? What is this story truly about? Ultimately, this debate is less about the mechanics of dying and way more about the conditions for living. It forces all of us to ask what we owe each other, especially those who are sick, disabled, and struggling. It's a story about dignity, support, and social safety nets. And that leaves us with the final and maybe the most important question. It's not just about whether MAID is right or wrong. It's whether we as a society are doing enough to make sure that for every single person facing immense suffering, life remains a genuinely viable choice.